Hello friends, welcome you all to the next lecture of the GC eConnect series of online lectures. We are studying the subject Construction Economics and Finance and we are into module 4. So today's concept for discussion is inflation. Now, what is inflation? Inflation is defined as an increase in the amount of money required to purchase or acquire the same quantity of products and services that were acquired without its effect. Inflation results in reduction in purchasing power of the monetary units. The inflation rate F is measured as the rate of increase per time period in the amount of money required to obtain the same amount of products and services. So, in easy terms, inflation is increasing of the rate whereas the quantity remains same. So, easy example for it is 1 liter of petrol and it was say 50 rupees. So, 50 rupees could get you 1 liter of petrol, but now it will be 75 rupees which you have to pay, but quantity remains the same. Now that jump of cost of petrol from rupees 50 to rupees 75, okay, which is nearly 25% jump, is nothing but your inflation. So inflation is the biggest parameter which impacts all the businesses and industry, and hence understanding of inflation concept is most important, and especially in this crisis period such as the effect of COVID-19, okay, inflation will be at its peak. So let us try and understand what is inflation and how it affects. So here we have written one statement: inflation results in reduction in purchasing power. It is right. If you have 100 rupees, initially you used to get say 2 liters of petrol. This is the days when I was in college, okay. But now with that same 100 rupees, I cannot get 1 liter of petrol or 1 liter of fuel. This applies to various other commodities, okay, which we are using on day-to-day basis. So what does inflation do? It reduces the purchasing power, because you have 100 rupees, value of 100 rupees has not changed, but what has happened because of inflation, the value of the product has increased. It reduces your purchasing power. So rate of inflation is a very important concept which we have to understand. If the rate of inflation is high, your purchasing power is low. If the rate of inflation is low, the purchasing power is high, as simple as that. So when we say the developed countries of the world, there the inflation rate is very low, okay. That means the rate of the products or commodities or services doesn't change much with time, but in those countries where there is financial instability or there is an internal conflict, the finances are not stable, you will find huge variations in the inflation rate, which will affect basic day-to-day life of a common person. In inflation, if inflation is there in general market, the effect of inflation on interest rates need to be taken into account for economic analysis. The interest rates that indicates the effect of price of inflation which is occurring in general economy is known as market interest rate. It takes into account the adjustment for the price due to inflation in the market. So now here comes an important concept of market interest rate. So briefly I will give you an example. Say I am keeping a sum of rupees 1 lakh, okay, as an fixed deposit in the bank, and the bank is offering me say an rate of interest of 7% per annum. That means for per 100 rupees of my investment, the bank will give me 7 rupees extra. In simple terms, my investment is 1 lakh and I am depositing that for say 3 years. But in 3 years the inflation rate is going high or going up by say 3%. Okay, is going up by 3%. That means my expenses will increase by 3%. So the effective interest rate on my investment is not 7%. My effective interest rate, if you calculate taking inflation into account, will be 7% minus 4%, sorry 7% minus 3%, which is the inflation rate which we are predicting for the 3 years. So 7 minus 3 gives us 4. That means the 1 lakh rupees which has deposited is not earning at a rate of 7 rupees per 100 rupees, but because of the effect of inflation, it is earning me only 4 rupees per 100 rupees of investment, and this is what is called as market interest. Okay, so whenever you are investing, you should take care of the inflation rate. Otherwise, the things become difficult to manage. For example, if we invest in a vehicle, say we start a taxi service, we have invested in purchasing vehicles and we have not taken into account the inflation rate. But suddenly what happens is the petrol cost booms up, petrol cost rises because of inflation. Okay, that means what? Our working cost or the running cost of the vehicle also increases. But in that proportion, can you increase your charges immediately? No, it becomes difficult. If you are charging say 10 rupees per kilometer, suddenly you cannot make that 15 rupees per kilometer. It is a jump of 50%. But because of inflation, the value of fuel has increased. So those all things, if you don't take into account while initially fixing your charges of the service, then it affects a lot. So annually the rates of the service which you provide, for example, tomorrow you start a consultancy, you are charging say 5% of the total project cost first year. Then in the next year it is mandatory that you take the inflation into account and increase your charges by at least some percent. Otherwise you will not gain as much as you are expecting. You will do more work, fine, but your gains are less because inflation has hit you. Okay, so that process which takes the inflation into account for an investment or in dealing with money is termed as market interest rate. And a person who is good at judging this market interest rate will be more successful with his investments than compared to a person who is not good at it. In initial years, these things used to not affect much because the inflation rates were constant. But in today's world, especially in the case of commodities, now commodities includes what? Gold, silver, okay, and most impacting factor is fuel, that is petroleum. If these things change, there is a lot of variation in the inflation rate. So inflation becomes very much important, and hence the market interest rate has to be taken into account. Now you can get a question, what is market interest rate? What is that? It is that rate of interest which takes inflation into account for calculation. That is your market interest rate. Market interest rate is also known as inflated interest rate or combined interest rate, as it becomes the effect of both real interest as well as the inflation. Inflation has an impact on the cost of living and the development of economy as a whole. So inflation becomes very, very important for the entire economy of the country. Now, second impact of inflation, if you have taken the loan and if you have taken the loan as at market interest, your payments go on increasing because the market interest rates in the current scenario is going on increasing as it takes inflation into account. So it doesn't stop at one particular percentage, 8%. So tomorrow it will be 8.15. After a year you are not able to clear the loan, that can become 8.5 rate of interest which you have to pay because it is a market rate of interest. Okay, and in business these all things happen. So while considering the effect of inflation in the cash flow, It is also required to define the following two parameters while considering the alternatives. The two important parameters are actual monetary units and constant value monetary units. Now these are very important, and this is very nice to study because it is something new. Actual monetary units and constant value monetary units. Now see friends, you have taken a PG course in construction technology. So a management subject is mandatory for you in the form of construction economics and finance. You have to be active, your senses have to be active, and common sense should prevail. You have to read about finance, you have to deal with money in the future. Okay, so don't take yourself as a pure engineering person. Without the management subjects, it is difficult for a construction manager to survive. Okay, so now next let's go for the discussion of actual monetary units and constant value monetary units. Actual monetary units. The actual monetary units are also referred as future or inflated monetary units. The monetary units can be rupees, dollars, euros, etc. That is the currency. The purchasing power of the actual monetary units includes the effect of inflation on the cash flow at time it occurs. Okay, so now this is very important concept. We must have seen the rate of dollars and rupees. Okay, currently $1 nearly gives you up to 75 rupees, right? So what is that? Those are actual monetary units, means those are the currencies. The purchasing power of the actual monetary units includes the effect of inflation on cash flow at the time it occurs. Okay, one related example to this is, if all of us have seen IPL, initially the salaries of these players, okay, which were purchased in the auctions, were given in terms of dollars, but in the last two auctions it was decided that as the inflation rate is high, because of which the dollar is gaining and gaining, okay, when the payments have to be made, it becomes difficult to pay because the inflation has impacted the actual monetary units. Okay, if a player is purchased for say $5,000, as we are it's a Indian Premier League, it has to pay the money in terms of rupees, but monetary value is dollars. Okay, so at the time of auction the dollar rate might be 68, but during the payment, if that rate has increased up to 75, it becomes a burden for the franchises, and it is very rare that rupees and dollars will go in the reverse way. Okay, because the currency of US, which is taken as standard, is so strong that we reaching it or overtaking it is very difficult or next to impossible. Now that is what is actual monetary units. So now if you go to the currencies of the Arab countries, especially Bahrain, okay, one Bahrain currency, dinar or riyadh, okay, whatever that currency we have there, is equivalent to 165 Indian rupees. Okay, imagine if you get 100 riyadh, okay, or 100 Bahrain dollar or whatever is that symbol, I forgot that unit. If you get say 100 currency, it will be multiplied by 165 directly. Okay, it will be multiplied by 165 directly. That means 1,65,000 rupees. That is what is actual monetary units. But if you take countries like Indonesia and all, our Indian currency stands very strong as compared to their currencies. Okay, so currency rate, that is the actual monetary units, becomes a very important concept while trading. Okay, it becomes a very important concept while trading, and your currency should be strong so that it can be taken as a base currency or a reference currency. Now for example, the dollar is taken as a base currency or reference currency by many units because its rates are stable and always it is increasing. Okay, so these are what are actually monetary units. Next we have is constant value monetary units. The constant value monetary units are also called as real or inflation free monetary units. The constant value monetary units are expressed in terms of the same purchasing power for the cash flow with reference to a base period. Mostly in engineering economics studies, the base period is taken as 0, that is now or current, but it can be any time period as required. So now what is constant value monetary unit? It is a fixed value, okay, it is a fixed reference which we take for making one calculation. Now for example, if we had 5,000 rupees in 1990, what is the value of that 5,000? What would have been the value of that 5,000 as of today? Okay, we must have heard our parents and all saying that time 100 rupees was a big amount, or that time 1,000 rupees was a big amount. Okay, why? 1,000 was 1,000 itself. Okay, it did not have more number of zeros. But what was that? That is nothing but constant value of monetary units. What changes? Current effect of currency. Okay, changes. The 1,000 rupees in 1960, okay, will be equivalent to say about 100 rupees now, or 1,000 rupees now might be equivalent to say 50,000 rupees in that era. What is this? Constant value monetary units. So it forms a base, it forms a reference. Okay, it is a fixed value which remains constant as it is inflation free. Okay, when we multiply that value, we get the monetary units in the present era as well as in the past. Similarly, we can predict the monetary units in the future era. Okay, that is what is constant value monetary units. So a detailed study will be required to understand these concepts, and these things also can become your seminar topics. Impact of change of currency rates on Indian construction market. Okay, that can be your seminar topic. Those are interesting things, and the better you are with finance, the happier you will be. Okay, nothing can replace money. Okay, nothing can replace money. We might be reading the quotes, happiness, satisfaction and all those stuffs, but nothing can replace money. Now also you are able to see, okay, people who are staying in foreign countries are coming back in the flights. Whoever is paying, that is secondary, but see the comfort. They are coming back in flights, they have been given hotel quarantine, whereas the laborers who are not good with this finance, okay, many times the earnings of the laborers are also sufficient, but they lack in financial knowledge and they don't have money. See how they are suffering. Okay, so they want to just go back to their own native place, and whatever it is, they want to be there back into their home. Okay, just see the difference. Why finance is importance. Okay, don't go by the quotes. We are not of that level to take the quotes and be happy in life. Important thing is money. Okay, money has to be earned in a proper way, invested in a proper way, spent in a proper way, and saved in a proper way to be financially successful. Okay, if you are financially successful, happiness comes with that. So this is what is the first part of your inflation lecture. So let's continue further with the types of inflation. Very nice, very beautiful concepts, okay, comes in types of inflation. There are three main types of inflation. One is demand pull, second is cost pull, and third is built-in inflation. So now let's study these three types of inflations. First is demand pull, second is cost pull, and third is built-in inflation. Demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation occurs when the overall demand for the goods or services increases faster than the production capacity of the economy. This type of inflation leads to a demand supply gap, that is a shortage, which results in an increase in the price. Okay, so we all have seen sanitizer, 50 ml bottle costs 30 rupees. Market demand increased like anything because of COVID-19. The same sanitizer bottle, say 30 ml or 50 ml costing 25 to 50 rupees became 200 rupees. Simple masks, okay, Simple masks which were for 20 rupees were sold for 100 rupees. Why? Because demand supply gap increased, and this type of inflation will be called as demand pull inflation. So previously with your 100 rupees you could have purchased, you could have purchased the sanitizer, say 500 ml of sanitizer for 100 rupees. But now because of the demand pull inflation, what is happening, with your 100 rupees you are able to just purchase 50 ml of the sanitizer. Where was 500 ml, where is 50 ml. Okay, that is the best example for your demand pull inflation. So we will take a civil engineering example with respect to your supply demand curve. We will try to understand. So now here we have supply demand curve. So first point is, an increase in the demand causes the aggregate demand curve AD1 to shift up to AD2. So firstly, AD1 is our demand curve of aggregate, okay, is our demand curve of aggregate, and AS, which is in green color, is our supply curve of the aggregate. So initially AD2 is not there, our curve is what, only AD1 for the supply AS, and we have the price P1 for that. So now what happens, the demand for aggregate has increased, okay, that makes the curve shift from AD1 to AD2, okay, shift the curve from AD1 to AD2 as demand has increased but supply curve remains the same, okay. So now see what has happened to the price. From P1 the price changes to P2, that is the price has increased, okay. Why? There is a shortage of that particular material or commodity in the market. No, there is no shortage, demand has increased, supply has remained constant. That is, there is a gap between supply and demand. Supply is constant, demand has increased, the rates go up, okay. So this is what demand pull inflation is caused by a shift in the demand. The demand shifted from AD1 to AD2, supply remained constant, and the price increased from P1 to P2. A popular example of the demand pull inflation is the oil industry. Over the last decade, the demand for oil has increased significantly. However, oil is a scarce resource, that is, it is available in limited quantity, so there is only a limited amount of oil available, and thus the demand has increased more rapidly than the supply, because of which the barrel cost of oil has almost increased 3 times in past 20 years, okay. In past 20 years when we take, the rate has increased 3 times. Yes, the petrol rates were about 30-35 rupees, I have seen that, okay. I have seen that when we were in a school and all, when we used to go to fill petrol with our dad, we were interested in seeing that meter. So 1 liter petrol was about, say, 30 rupees, 25 rupees and all. Previously it was still less, but now what happened, the demand increased, supply remained the same, or say even supply of oil decreased. Hence what happened, the rate goes on increasing 2 times, 3 times, okay. So that was, say, 25-30 rupees, now we are paying nearly 75 to 80 rupees, and in coming days I think it will be a century. So what is happening here, we are having a huge impact of demand pull inflation on economy. But now currently what has happened, suddenly as we are using less number of vehicles, industries are closed, what has happened, the demand for fuel has come down like anything. When the demand for fuel has come down means it has crashed. Literally only 20% of the produced oil has been used. Hence if you see, the oil rates have gone down like hell, okay, they have fallen. But what happens is, as the purchasing is done on monetary basis, okay, purchasing is done on monetary basis, still the fuel cost remains the same. This is market value of inflation, okay. And then secondly, government has to recover the funds which it is spending widely. Fuel becomes a very important source, which is a mandatory source, and if the fuel rates are kept as they are, okay, people will pay, and hence what can happen is indirectly government is benefiting because currently it is not gaining anything else. So which are the only items which they can use to gain money? One is the fuel, and they are utilizing it to the fullest because they want funds. They have to give funds to each state. Now recently you must have heard a big package of 10 lakh crores been declared. We even can't count the zeros on it. Okay, it is nearly 10% of our GDP. So from where the money will come? Okay, money comes from taxpayers. Then if the business is stopped, no transactions are there, tax won't be collected. Okay, so those all things affect your inflation. So this is your first type of inflation where the price levels increases purely because of the increase in demand with a constant supply. Next comes cost push inflation. Okay, cost push inflation occurs as a result of an increase in the cost of the production. When the prices of the inputs such as raw materials, labor increase, the production of goods or service becomes more expensive and the producer needs an higher price to be profitable. So now we have a demand supply curve. Here I have taken an example of cement industry. The higher price of raw materials and increase in labor cost caused the cement supply curve CS to shift to the left side. Now green color CS1 was the initial cement supply curve. Demand CD is not changing, okay, demand is as it is, but what happened is because of the increase in the cost of raw materials, okay, the cost of labors, cost of electricity, cost of transportation and various aspects, the curve CS1, that is cement supply 1, shifted up. Demand is there itself, demand is not changed, but what happened, the cost which was P1 now again changed to P2. So now here we are finding an increase in cost, not because of the increase in demand, but it is increase in the rate of the raw materials, labors, etc. So this type of inflation is said as cost push inflation. Okay, so this is cost push inflation where demand remains same or similar, but the production cost of the goods increases, because of which the price of the goods also increase. Okay, a cement bag which was available for say 250 rupees per bag of 50 kgs now has become 300, 325, 350, 370. Okay, so this is what it is. So if the company wants to make the profit, they have to push the prices ahead. So this type of inflation is called as cost push inflation. One of the most famous example of cost push inflation is, again I am taken the oil industry. Particularly in 1973 there was an oil crisis which is also known as first oil shock. This crisis was triggered when the members of OPEC is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, maximum are the Gulf countries, proclaimed that an oil embargo which resulted in sudden supply shock, that is sudden decrease in oil supply. That means they wanted to control the whole world. 1973 and all, Russia was, Russia had scattered, US was growing as a power, China was coming in, but oil was only with the Gulf. Okay, after this oil crisis is what US understood, that if it wants to rule the world as the strongest economy, it has to produce oil, and they started exploring oil production. But before that, maximum of the world's oil content was governed by Gulf. They decided that no, we are not supplying the oil. Okay, we are not supplying the oil as the oil extraction costs have increased. So we have to produce the oil and supply it for an increased rate. Demand was there, demand was same. Okay, so that time what happened? The cost surged from $3 to $12 per barrel without the change in demand. Now see here, $3. For example, say at that stage our currency rate was say 50, means $1 is 50 rupees. How much dollars it has increased here? From $3 cost went to $12. So we have an increase of $9. As for US it is $9, but if you take the Indian currency it will be 9 5s are 45, that is 450 rupees. Okay, sudden increase. Then this is how your monetary units become important. For them it was a small amount, $9, but for us it became 450 rupees. Now if say the oil prices go high by $10, how much it will impact us? 10 into 70 or 75, that is 700 to 750 rupees, and that's what your monetary units are, very very important. Okay. Next, as a result, the price of oil globally surged. Now this point our ministry has taken down. Okay, we are able to now purchase oil in rupees. Initially we had to purchase oil in dollars, and with the inflation rate the cost which India had to bear was huge. But now with the change and with the change in the foreign policies, a positive approach, okay, stand of the government and various other factors, we are able to convince the Gulf countries that boss will purchase the oil in rupees itself. So that monetary impact which the change in dollar used to cause our purchase of oils has been certainly reduced to quite some extent, which is very very much beneficial. Okay, otherwise at this stage we would have expected already the oil prices to crash above 100. Last one is built-in inflation. Expectations of future inflation causes built-in inflation. When prices rise, workers expect and demand higher wages to maintain their cost of living. However, higher wages results in higher cost of production, which leads to higher prices, and the spiral begins. Spiral means chakkar begins. Okay, one affects another, another affects another, another affects another. Okay, at the end the common person has to pay more money. Because of this circular dependency, built-in inflation is sometimes also referred to as wage price spiral. See, again one more topic for your analysis or seminar: impact of wage price spiral in construction industry, because our industry is more dependent on the labor charges increased, automatically cost of construction increase. If you want to purchase the home, purchase a new flat, automatically you have to pay more. Okay, so that's why these concepts are very nice new thing to learn, and they are interesting. At this point, it is important to note that the expectations that case built-in inflation always originate from either persistent demand pull inflation or significant cost pull inflation in the past. In other words, built-in inflation does not occur on its own. It always needs an catalyst or a trigger to kick it off. Let's take the present example. There was a lockdown. What we felt that we will not get anything. Okay, all shops may be closed. So what we did, we started purchasing all the household materials. If we required say 2 kgs of rice, no, we got 5 kgs. If we required 2 kgs of sugar, we got 10 kgs. Why? We were afraid. That was what is called as a trigger point. What happened because of this? The market understood that demand is more. They had stocks, they had sufficient stocks. There was no need to panic and purchase material in huge quantity. So market understood that the demand is more, and scarcity of stocks can be made by saying that stocks are not available, but stocks were there, and it gave a chance to the market to increase the prices. Okay, and this is built-in impression. The simple kitchen things, okay, which we used to get for 25 rupees per kg, 30 rupees per kg, suddenly shot up to 55 rupees per kg. And the thing was that we were afraid. We felt that tomorrow a day might come where we are not getting anything. But see here, we are now a strong country. Okay, if you are up to a certain class, say now we have spent nearly 55 days of lockdown, now partial lockdown. Was there any day when we slept without food and some things were not available? Yes, we had to compromise on some parts, but markets did not stop. The availability of goods was there, but what happened in this phase? That built-in inflation came. Okay, market said that yes boss, this is the time where I can make money. Anything which was for 10 rupees was made 15 rupees. Anything which was for 25 rupees was made 35 rupees. But we did not question that time. Why? We were in the built-in inflation. Okay, and what was the catalyst? The lockdown proved to be a catalyst for this built-in inflation, which made us to purchase more and more, sometimes beyond the requirement. And because of that, what happens when we purchase beyond the requirement? Demand increases, supply is constant, and that affects what? That causes your built-in inflation. Okay, here in this point I have mentioned here, this built-in inflation either occurs because of demand pull, which happened now. Okay, demand was more, supplies were less or constant, shot up, price was suddenly shot up, which was built-in inflation. This did not happen as per time, it suddenly happened. Okay, and in some cases cost push inflation. Okay, because availability of resources was very less. For example, now if you want to hire a taxi, if someone is caught in Belgaum, he wants to go to Bangalore. If generally if you make a taxi, it will cost you say 5,000 rupees, 7,000 rupees. But now they are demanding 15 to 20,000 rupees. Why? It is cost push. Costs have increased. Laborers have saying that, drivers are saying that no, I cannot adjust with 500 rupees per day now. Why? They are in demand. So cost push inflation has now caused what? Built-in inflation. You see each and everything around you. This is the best period to analyze your built-in inflation. Now laborers might say, per day I am not taking now 400 rupees, I want 600 rupees, then only will come to work. Then laborers are scared, that is shortage of laborers is going to impact the civil industry, especially in our states like anything, because we had laborers from Rajasthan, Bihar, Orissa working here. All the carpentry people, maximum places were from Rajasthan. Okay, maximum site had Bihari laborers. What happened? If they have gone back to their home, we cannot stop our work. We have to now depend on the local laborers. And now what local laborers will say? We are charging say 600 rupees per day. If you want, will come. So what happened here? This was the cost push inflation, which will lead to built-in inflation suddenly in civil industry. Okay, so at last I like to present you all the inflation chart of our country. This is a very interesting chart. It is from 1984 up to 2020. Now see, only in 2002 we had a low inflation rate, and now we are at 3.34. Now because of COVID effect, sure it is but sure that it will go high, but by analyzing this chart you can easily understand the functioning of the country in those periods. Okay, if you have common sense, okay, you will understand what I am trying to tell. As a professor I cannot explain more of it, but see those years and see the things how they have changed. Now the world was hit by a recession during 2008 to 2010, okay, or say 2012. There were 4 years all industries were hit by recession. There the suddenly inflation rate has gone up to 12.31. Then wherever we had certain crisis, in 1992 we had the biggest Bombay bomb blasts and all. Bombay is the biggest economical or financial center. It impacts everything. Whenever we have war or such thing, again it impacts everything. Okay, so this inflation rate chart is very nice to be analyzed. You can see why we suffer. It is because our inflation chart is varying a lot. Okay, see the variations. If we take, so you yourself can check the variations with that. Take your birth year and just see how much the things have varied. Okay, this inflation chart is a very nice example for analyzing how the economy varies, how unstable things are there, okay, because of inflation, and why prices increase and decrease. So I have made an attempt to explain you all in detail what is inflation. I'll conclude with this inflation chart. Thank you.